Man, I am so glad to be joined by my old friend, Dan Shaughnessy. Not old in age, I should say, but we go back quite a while. Dan, it's so good to see you. One of the great American sports writers, certainly a legend in Boston, and my friend for many, many years when I was working there. Thanks for joining me.
It's great to see you again, Carolyn. It's been too long. I remember when you were just a young pup reporter here in MSNBC Boston, or whatever that thing is called now. And yeah, we used to see you at all the big events here in Boston. We loved having you.
Yeah, it was a place where I really cut my teeth professionally. I got an up close look at the fandom that exists in that area and how passionate they are, how knowledgeable they are. You know, they keep up with everything. And there's nuances between all the different fan bases, but I spent a lot of time observing the Celtics fan base and had a lot of respect for just how passionate they were. Before we kind of get into the top headlines of the day, this year's squad, Joe Mazzulla, the Kyrie Irving drama that seems to follow him everywhere he goes. I do want to take a minute to touch on the latest book that you've written. So tell me a little bit about what you've done over the last couple of years in this latest book.
Well, thank you, Carolyn. The book is called Wish It Lasted Forever, Life with the Larry Bird Celtics. And this book came out last November at the start of last year's season. And it's a pandemic book. I mean, everybody, people thought there were going to be babies born after the pandemic. No, there were books born during the pandemic because everybody had time in their hands. People were home. So I just tracked down Bill Walton, Kevin McHale, Cedric Maxwell, ML Carr, all those guys from the Larry Bird era. And the one thing you're too young to have experienced, us old timers who cover the NBA, we lived with them. Airplanes, commercial travel, hotel bars, waiting for bags, and the ability to really tell your fans, the NBA fans, what they were like. There was no social media then, so they didn't have all the devices that you guys have today. The players can now connect with the fans themselves. In our day, we were left to do that. We really got to know them, and we could tell the fans and the readers and the listeners what they were like. And this is kind of an inside look at old school NBA when dinosaurs roamed the earth and Larry Bird had it going. And just the NBA, a very important period for the NBA was the Larry Magic finals of the 80s. It's kind of the Ali Frazier when the NBA went from finals on tape delay to the global product that it is today, which launches into your very fine segment.
Well, even though we're inundated with social media, which I think is not necessarily a good thing, and all these athletes today have their own brands, their own platforms, their own agendas in terms of what they want you to know about their life, I still think that true sports fans are craving the nostalgia of maybe not being exposed to everything. I mean, we're a voyeuristic culture, so we love to kind of know everything. Case in point, the way that we've hounded Tom Brady and Giselle over their divorce, which has felt really sickening in a lot of ways. But I think that there probably is an appetite for people that want to go backwards, or maybe that's just me. I mean, I often think once a day, I think that I was born in the wrong decade. I'm living in the wrong decade. I don't understand social media. I mean, I want to view that time in the NBA through the lens of somebody who was there up close when everything else was private.
Well, we always liked that about you, Carolyn, when you were here. You had a little respect for your elders and that there was something that happened before you came along. And yes, very important time for the league. And I was there when David Stern became commissioner, and the league vaulted into the era that, this led up to the Dream Team. It kind of went from Bird, Magic to Michael Jordan to the Barcelona Dream Team, and now the global entity that it is. The guys all have 1 million followers, but the fans never will get to know them the way we did in those days because, again, the living situation just allowed us to really show them all the time. And it's much more, because of all the stuff you referenced with phone cameras and social media, they need to be more protective now. And they're lucky that there's kind of a moat there for them now so that more of the stuff doesn't get out because, hey, they're human beings. They have to have lives, and they're very high profile celebrities these days.
I think some NBA fans maybe yearn for the David Stern NBA era. They miss him, and that's no disrespect to Adam Silver, except to say that we're in a different time now with the league than we were when he was at the helm of it all. And that makes some NBA fans sad, I think. And now Adam Silver has found himself in this position where he has been really deferential to so many of the players that are at the very top of the league in terms of letting them set the agenda for what the NBA should be. And here comes Kyrie Irving again taking aim at something that is very important to the commissioner of the league, his religion. What was your kind of big takeaway from this latest drama involving Kyrie? And I know that you're so well versed, and Boston fans are so well versed in everything that sort of happened while he was there, the vaccine. Controversy seems to follow him around. What was your takeaway from this last sort of installment of that?
It's a very unfortunate time for the league, and it's not good for anybody. It's not good for Kyrie. It's not good for the fans of the league. It's just it's a sad time, and it's unfortunate. He came through here. I didn't know it was going to be like that. I remember making that shot for the Cavaliers. They win the championship. Hey, this is great. Here he comes, and the nonsense hadn't reached the level that it was at now. And he was kind of starting off here, playful with the flat Earth thing, and that sort of stuff. It was a little bit funny. And but then by the end, it wasn't funny, and he kind of shot his way out of town. Very disrespectful to the franchise here. He promised the fans he was going to come back, and then he didn't, so they turned on him, and then that led to a couple of ugly playoff series where it wasn't good for anybody, and just old stuff came out. He's stomping on the logo, and so they were kind of done with him here, and then he goes into his next life, and this has just been really unfortunate. And the episode you're talking about, with retweeting that film, failing to answer the question, are you anti-Semitic? He had chances to say, no, I renounce that kind of hate thinking, and he didn't do it. So he's late to the game with stuff now, and of course now we have the Players Association stepping up for him, which I understand they're obligated to do. He's part of it. I mean, he's a executive in the Players Association, which I would not want him representing me if I were in the association, but in any event, he is. Jaylen Brown in our town is being protective of him. They're friends. And the friend thing kind of gets in the way in a lot of cases here, and that's the league that we have today. That was one of the things right in the old timers with the book, the Celtics, and they hated everybody. They hated the Lakers. They hated the Pistons. There was never going to be any protection of other guys. Larry Bird wanted to know if Lambeer was on the All-Star team because he said it ruined his whole weekend if he was in the All-Star game. So this is how they weren't hugging after the games or protecting guys on other teams, and it's more of literally an association of players now, and they look after each other. But this has been a kind of a dark period for the league, and Jaylen Brown just 2 nights ago talked about that he doesn't believe that Brooklyn is being fair to the player and that they're making him do too much, and he doesn't like hearing Joe Tsai say there's more work to do, and that doesn't play well here in Boston.
I was going to ask you what the reaction has been there for Jaylen Brown after defending Kyrie so staunchly and taking aim at ownership of a team across the league. To your point about in the good old days, it used to be focused on rivalry and basketball, and now it's so much different than that. What's the reaction been like from the fan base?
Jaylen gets a lot of love from the fan base here. He's a wonderful player. He's a cerebral player, and been here a long, long time now, and always, he's been on the side. He's been a social warrior for, after the George Floyd episode, and just causes, and a very thoughtful guy. When they had a moment for him at the start of this season, dedicating the season to him, Jaylen Brown was the player chosen to address the crowd because he's good at that. But he's had a couple of chances in the last month to step up and in my view, continue his social justice warrior, mantra with other issues, and he has not done it. He was late to the game, disavowing Ye or Kanye West or whatever we call him, and it was only when Adidas dropped him and people got to Jaylen and said, you can't. First day, Jaylen said, I'm sticking with the agency. My friend needs help. And again, late to the game on that one, and now coming to the defense of Kyrie. I understand he's a thoughtful guy, he's a smart guy, but in my view, you can't pick and choose. If you're going to be a warrior for social justice, you have to be across the board on all hate speech, all that stuff, and not be selective.
I think it's a great point, and it was a question that a lot of people around here in New York were asking was, where are Kyrie's contemporaries condemning this kind of behavior when it was an issue that didn't directly involve them? And for many, many weeks, there was nothing coming out of the league. This is a problem, I think, Dan, with idolatry as it relates to just worshiping these athletes. Sometimes people forget they are complex human beings and not necessarily reflective of our own thoughts and beliefs. And somebody brought this up to me the other day. They said, hey, Kyrie might be anti-Semitic. I mean, this might be who he is. He might have this set of beliefs. And I said, I think he does believe the things that he says. And that's why it was so important for him to actually apologize in front of a camera so that we could hear him say it. And the fact that he failed to do so many times kind of left me wondering, well, we're obsessive over these athletes and we worship these athletes and we want these athletes to be the best representation of humanity, but it's not always the case.
Right. I mean, you don't really know people, and we have to go by what they show themselves to be. And again, when you have young men who are so active in in anti-hate causes in some areas, you'd like to see that be across the board. And that's the part that's been bothersome here.
So you have a piece out in the Globe on Jason Tatum, how he has been incredible so far this season, but maybe not necessarily a time to crown him MVP just yet. Can you walk us through this latest piece that you wrote?
Well, I just had a little fun with it. I went over there Monday night. They were playing the Thunder, and they had played 13 games. So, and I did the math. 14 games is 17% of the season. And there's been all this MVP buzz around your old station being the primary perpetrator here. They've been just pushing the MVP narrative for Jason Tatum. And I understand he's having a great year. He's second in scoring. He was top 5 last year, made the All-NBA team, and had the horrible finals. And he's worked hard to make that go away and be a better player this year. He is a better player this year. He's looking to pass a little bit more and defending better. More leadership, and they're the best team in the NBA on paper after 14 games. So those things are good. But I just think it's early for MVP. And I can't remember another sport where they're talking about this in November. This would be like a baseball player in the middle of May talking about MVP, or fans getting his campaign going. NFL player after 3 games. So he looks like the MVP. It's way early. But I talked to a few guys, your old friend Brian Scalabrine and Chris Forsberg and people up there, and they've pushed the narrative. And Scal said it's because of the betting sites now. They all have odds on these things. And every time he does a podcast or a show, they want to know, have the odds changed on Tatum for MVP. And he also cited the culture of today's athletes going through the AAU years and getting trophies every weekend of who was the best. And they kind of grow up with this, and they expect it at this level, and it's important to them. So here we are, handicapping, Giannis, the Joker, Jokic, Harden, Durant, down. Who's got the best odds for MVP, even though they've only played 17% of the schedule. So all that said, I chased down Bob Cousy and Dave Cowens. They were MVPs. And I said to Cowens, I said, was it like this when you were playing? He says, hell, nobody talked about that. They came into the locker room at the end of the year and said, you're MVP. I said, oh, that's great. They put athletic tape on a ball, said MVP, and I had to take a picture because I think it was in the paper the next day. That was the extent of his conversation about the MVP award in 1973.
That's such a great anecdote. And you're right. It's changed. It really has changed. And that's an interesting point, that betting has had such a tangible effect on how we're actually viewing these kinds of awards and accolades. What about the job that Joe Mazzulla has done there? I can't think of a finer tightrope to walk when I consider how engaged the Celtics fan base is, the controversy with Ime Udoka, the fact that this is a squad in theory that has championship expectations, and here he comes. Does he deserve to have that interim tag removed?
I think he does deserve to have the interim tag removed, but I think it would be kind of a load off for everybody. But no one seems to be, people inside don't seem to be too worried about it. The players, the coach himself. It's kind of a talk show issue. They're getting along fine. I suppose if they lose some games, it could go the other way. But I just think the Celtics ownership and the front office, they do not plan on Ime Udoka coaching the team again. So I don't know why they didn't just fire him in the first place if they felt this strongly about the issue, but there's this weird situation where it's a 1-year suspension. In my view, he will never coach for them again. When Brooklyn was interested in him, as soon as Nash got fired, the Celtics, I've talked to, they were not going to ask for compensation. They were ready to just cut ties. Well, if that's where you are, just fire the guy. So I don't know whether it's litigation they're worried about or money. I can't imagine. But whatever reason, he's still the suspended guy. So I guess they're going to wait till November and then fire him then. I just would expect some other franchise is going to come along and have interest. But I think that the net thing was bad for Udoka, because you don't want to be the franchise introducing Ime Udoka to your fan base and saying, we have even lower standards than the Brooklyn Nets. That's probably not a good selling point.
Well, it was a surprising decision when that leaked that the Nets were interested in him, because you thought, oh my gosh, this has been such a complete dumpster fire already since these big three got together. I think that the parting of Steve Nash and this team was mutual. I imagine that he had it up to here and at some point said, I don't need this anymore. And then you have the organization making a decision to bring in a guy who is fresh off of a controversy involving, allegations of sexual misconduct, however you want to put it. Were you surprised to see the Nets kind of jump in and then back off? It wasn't a good look for Brooklyn either.
I just thought he'd be the next coach of the Nets. I thought he checked a lot of boxes for them. He had worked there. He knows the personnel. He knows the high maintenance individuals that are there. He had a great year as coach here. He didn't kill the president. I mean, it's like, I just thought this solves a lot of issues for them. But today's climate, I can understand they didn't want to start up a new list of grievances or offenses like that. They don't take this seriously themselves. So it worries me a little bit for Udoka, who did a really good job here in 1 year. And there are people who think, my goodness, this man was overpunished for something that's in the old days would not have been viewed as harshly as the Celtics did. Whatever it is, they're not having him anymore, as far as I can see. And so he will have to work somewhere else. And I thought it would be Brooklyn. I did, but I guess they started to feel the heat, and there's so much other heat on them. They just they deferred.
How good do you think that this Celtics squad this season ultimately is? How far do you think that they can go?
They can win the championship. I mean, I know I just said let's not talk about MVP in November, but they can. I mean, there's a raft of teams. I mean, we know what the Bucks are capable of. They have won one. They have their pieces there now. And I think the Eastern Conference is pretty good right now. I just think it's better. But the Celtics are capable. I mean, they're 11-3 out of the gate. They haven't had Robert Williams. And, maybe he'll never be able to stay on the floor. I don't know. But if he is on the floor, changes things with the rim protection they have down low. Brogdon's been hurt. He's a really good player. They're like 9 or 10 deep. And Marcus Smart is playing great point guard. I don't think of him as legitimate point guard, but his assist turnover ratio is spectacular. He's been a leader, less of the nonsense. Brown and Tatum can go for 30 both each night. And now they're getting, Sam Hauser's kind of the poor man's Duncan Robinson. They're just, it's all looking good for them right now. But hey, it's November, but they're a contender, no question.
And out in Utah, they've exceeded expectations, I think, a little bit past what people were going to be possible after everything that happened in the offseason. There was talk, would Danny Ainge, wouldn't he tank a season to get the top pick in next year's draft? Would he?
No. I talked to him last week, and we thought he was tanking, of course, just taking the job and getting out of here. And, he's got a lot of family back there, and he's a really good evaluator of talent. He is. And this is what he left here. He left these people in really good shape. I think he should be in the Hall of Fame someday. He had a dual career, he's 2-time All-Star as a player, greatest team of all time. And he's just been a good coach and a GM for a long time. Guys that I didn't even like that much, like Rondo he picked that one out. And, what he did with those drafts with Brown and Tatum, I mean, don't forget, there were other people that, were rumored to be going ahead of them. And he made the right call in each time. He didn't pick Giannis when he had him at 13. So we yell at him about that one, but hey, it happens. So whatever they're doing there, that is working, and it's no surprise. Good judge of talent. But again, I didn't see that coming in a million years.
Leave it to a Celtics fan to just go straight in on what he didn't do as opposed to what he did do. I mean, he
took Kelly Olynyk over Giannis. It's again, I mean, a lot of people did that year. Giannis was 15, but no one knew. But we always have to tease him about that one.
Dan, thank you so much. Before I let you go, just remind everybody where they can find the book.
Oh yeah, Wish It Lasted Forever: Life with the Larry Bird Celtics. It's on Amazon. Your local bookstores, which we love to promote, the local bookstores, Barnes & Noble, the usual thing like that. But it's out there. You'll have if you like the old NBA when it was better than it is today, it's a lot of fun.
How much do you miss the old NBA?
You can't be the old guy, get off my lawn, but it was more fun. It was. And during the pandemic, which really fired up a lot of these projects, they were showing all those old games on your old network because there was no content, there was no games. And, watching the Celtics and Pistons go at it and the Celtics and Sixers go at it and blood on the floor and all the good old days, man. Yeah, we pined for those days. It was fun.
Yeah, we really do. And a good incentive to pick up the book and relive and probably learn some stuff that you didn't already know. Dan Shaughnessy, it's such a pleasure to see you and talk to you. Thank you so much.
Great to see you again, Carolyn. Take care.